In my experience, I would say it's a combination of Agile and Waterfall, but more of the preparation is more of Waterfall because you have the pre preclinical trials where it's done in a regulated environment in a laboratory, and once a compound is identified, it goes for a pre-approval by the FDA before we can start having it to be tested on human subjects.
This is the episode 7 of the project management experience. I know it's been a minute and I'm as excited as you are to be on today's episode, just because we are doing something entirely different. Now, I'm sure that you have heard that you probably cannot call yourself a project manager if you do not have that title in quotes. Today, we are going to be debunking that myth because we are sharing with you the real life experience of a clinical trials manager who has been managing projects for over 10 years now. Stay tuned and let's dive in. All right, welcome to the project management experience. This is episode 7, and it's always a delight to be on this screen sharing real life experiences on how individuals, are delivering results in the project management space. And today I have someone really special. Her name is Sagua Efe. She is a clinical trials manager and has been project managing a lot of projects in the healthcare sector for quite a long time now. I'm going to leave all the, wonderful razzmatazz to Sagua to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about how she's been doing as a clinical trials manager during and managing projects. So over to you, Sagua. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Cindy. It's really a great privilege to be on this platform. Thank you for having me here on this platform to share my story and a little about myself, because we are constantly evolving. So I'll just dive right in. My name is Efe, and Efe Sagua. I have been working on projects literally, I would say, all my life, because really life is a project. And if we handle it in that way, we'll see that we all have been project manager right from the very get-go. Just because we don't have the title doesn't make us, not experienced in project management. So I would really say I've been working on projects for as long as I am alive. But professionally, I have been on quite a number of projects as a clinical trial manager. I work in the healthcare sector, and I work on clinical trials. On clinical trials, we just basically ensure that the drugs or the compound that is being tested is safely tested on subjects, and it's effective with data to back these up. And those data are being reviewed by the regulatory authorities in the different regions. Here in America, it's FDA, and it's then approved before it's commercialized for people like you and I to have access to it by healthcare professionals. So from start to finish, it's a pipeline. There's a life cycle, for having this approval eventually manifest. And my job as a clinical trial manager pretty much is to ensure that from the cradle, from the inception to the final state of the drugs being approved and accessible, I ensure that safety, because these are human lives we are talking about, safety is top on the list. And in addition to safety, we are also ensuring that there is proper integrity in the data that we capture. There is integrity, and there is also watching out for any side effects that this could have along the way in the course of ensuring that this drug is proven effective for the patient population that we are targeting. So pretty much, I don't know if I did answer your question, but that.
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you so much, Sagua, for giving us a brief into that, because I know that there are quite a lot of people that are interested in delving into the healthcare sector and probably think that, you can only actually, manage projects as a project manager, with that title. but I'm really quite interested. And that was one of the reasons I said, no, I have to just, bring you on the screen to educate people and let them know that they don't necessarily have to have that title, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I'm really quite interested in hearing from your project management journey in the clinical trial space is, how do you deliver projects there? Do you use Waterfall? Do you use Agile? Do you deliver projects in a phased approach, in a staggered approach? Because I do expect that in a clinical trials environment, you would probably be doing pilot runs, doing some lab tests, and then delivering in phases. I just want to be sure about how it works, because it would be very, very helpful for us.
So I would consider, so I would backpedal a little bit. I've worked in healthcare. I worked for a particular company where we were basically, it was a device company. And this was not clinical trials. There I implemented the agile mindset and the framework. But for clinical trial has some knowns, quite a number of things that you're expected to. And also there are a lot of unknowns. So in my experience, I would say it's a combination of agile and waterfall, but more of the preparation is more of waterfall, because you have the preclinical trials where it's done in a regulated environment in a laboratory, and once a compound is identified, it goes for a pre-approval by the FDA before we can start having it to be tested on human subjects. So I would say it's a combination of agile and waterfall.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to get a little bit of insight into your project team. How does it work? Do you then have other dedicated project team members, or do you work directly with, the work stream and business leaders? How are you able to ensure that that project is going along?
Great question. Thank you so much, Cindy. So there are a lot of players, as you will always know, that no tree can really be productive in isolation. There are a lot of players, and um my aspect of work has to do with mostly operations, the activities that go on, you know, um, throughout the life cycle of the clinical trials. And when I talk about operations, I'm talking about, what are the subjects doing? Are they coming in? Are they being scheduled? Are there any issues? The investigator, which in this case is the doctors, are they having any issues? Are patients being enrolled on time? Are they meeting the regulatory requirements? Are they entering the data on time? So that's the clinical operation, is really the day-to-day activity throughout the life cycle of the project. And while we are doing that, we are also communicating to the leaderships. We have a section where we call the clinical development team. Those team members are the real doctors. They are the medical monitors. They are the ones that ensure that all the medical jargons and the medical intricacies are being observed and are taken from a medical standpoint. They look at it from a medical standpoint. The real technical, those are the technical people, the medical monitors. So we communicate very closely with them, because while we're experiencing any hitch or hurdle or a blocker, we are explaining it to them. We are triaging it and making sure that we are not nothing falls through the cracks, and we are not also in the findings of the regulatory authorities, because these are human lives. So we really work closely with clinical development. We also work closely with the biostatistics group, because like I said, data is also a very big factor in clinical trial research. So we work with the data biostatistics group. We also work with safety. There's a group called the safety and pharmacovigilance. Pretty much pharmaco is like the drugs that are being used, and we are watching to ensure that there are no safety or severe adverse reaction or effects. And if there are, we are taking the necessary steps to covering and making sure that it's not it's not unnoticed, it's not documented, and it's not reported. We want to be sure that the patient is safe to continue to be on the study and also closely monitored throughout the study. So that's the aspects. We communicate with those people as well. We also communicate with regulatory group. Those are the people that ensure that, hey, are we in line? Did the patient consent to getting on this study? Are the regulatory documents, are they approved by the required regulatory bodies? Then we also have the quality assurance. Those are the people that ensure that quality wise we are on point, from both our side being the sponsor and from also the clinical trial sites as well. And if there are any deviations that could possibly lead to maybe an incident report, that's documented. Then we go into understanding, investigating where the problem is coming from. If it's a quality issue, where it's coming from, we can, if it requires, we have what we call the CAPA. It's a corrective and preventive action and preventive action documentation, where we really investigate, doing a root cause analysis and ensuring that this doesn't happen subsequently. All those are documented. Then we also have the medical writing group. Those are the people that really, delve into the proposal. The way I call the proposal, look at the proposal as the Bible of the study. This is what we want. This is how we want the study to be performed. And if the study is not performed within this parameter, because the proposal is approved by the regulatory authorities, that's a finding, because we are going beyond the scope for what we say we want to do. So the medical writing group are the ones that write all the technical jargons, put them together, ensure that, in collaboration with all other cross-functional teams, to ensure that this is properly written, it captures exactly what we want, it is effectively communicated to the end users, and everybody is aligned to what the expectations are. So that's it.
Wow.
There's a lot of collaboration. It's a moving train, and one of the major thing I would say that really seals it up is collaboration, communication, collaboration, because everybody, it's interconnected. Biostats cannot have a good data if we don't capture the data. And if we don't capture the data, it's a quality issue, because there's something that's definitely disconnected, and if it's a quality issue, then most likely would be a safety problem, so we need to also be mindful of all that. So it's really very interwoven.
That was very thorough. I feel like I can, work in your space right now. Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sagua. Right. So, I don't know if you can take a few minutes to describe a certain project. Maybe just pick on one of the numerous projects you've worked on and just, highlight briefly, one most successful project and what you think or what you did differently to ensure the success of that project.
Great question. You know that it, it takes a village to raise a child. Success is a very it's a collaborative effort from all teams. But I would say the most recent project that I worked on was a phase 3 study, where we were looking at patients that have a cardiovascular related rare disease. And I didn't join the study at the beginning. Um, I joined because the reason is most clinical trials are very long, especially if it's a phase 3. It's like 5 years. So there may be a possibility that you want to, opt for other things in your journey, in your career journey. So it's a long period of time. Most of the phase 3 studies, shorter periods like a phase 1 could be maybe start to finish. But I haven't really worked on a phase 1. But back to your question, the last project I worked on, so I was particularly involved and responsible for overseeing the vendors, the laboratory vendors, and as well as the protocol deviations. So what I did is I usually have my weekly meetings with them. The expectation has already been properly set. This is what we want. We have the contracts. We have the manual, the laboratory manual, which is what we go by. And we also have our worksheets. The worksheet is really the thorough detail of what the laboratory process should be like, from collection of the samples, processing of the sample, handling of the samples, and shipping of the samples. So my job there was to ensure that I constantly review the reports that we receive. We receive the reports every week. I review the reports and I make sure that the reports are aligned with what the expectations are. And if the reports, for example, if a sample is collected within a particular, the required particular frame, but not shipped within that time frame, it's going to raise a flag. I'm going to query that to say, why are we having the samples from this particular region or location not shipped as required? Is that documented already as a protocol deviation? Because it is a deviation from what the expectation should be. And if it is documented, how can we, what's the root cause? What's causing this? So I work with the project manager from the vendor side in the on the laboratory end, and also with the clinical operation team member lead, rather, to say, hey, this particular site is I have noted that this particular site keeps sending samples late. Are these samples still valid for testing? Because that's the potential risk. Will this sample still be valid for testing, and can the results be used for our data analysis? So if it's something that it's a quality issue that has happened over time, I will escalate to my manager and say, hey, I have noticed this trend. We need to talk about it, because these are the results we need to ensure that our studies, our study is, has the right amount of data to back the efficacy and the safety of the study. So I work closely with the project manager on the vendors. I also and also with the sites too, because if the samples are received, even if they are received on time, there could be some data entry issue. There could be some aspects that are not clear from the vendor's end, that they need proper clarification. So there could be queries that will be generated. And if those queries are generated, my job is to ensure that I work with the project manager, with the clinical trial lead for the clinical trial as in particular, to ensure that those queries are responded to within the time frame. We know, I mean, any doubts, any gray area is properly clarified, and the laboratory can continue with their work. So this happens, I mean, we can't really plan for any contingency, but this happens throughout the study. Was the COVID-19 really, affected us on this study? I mean, it affected every sector really, but one of the things we experienced was shortage of a particular solution. And that reason was because, of course, labs were doing, of course, the COVID vaccine trials was going on. So a lot of attention, a lot of diversion was just going on. Like they needed, that was top priority in the industry, right? So that led to shortage in some of the solutions that the labs will need to conduct other studies. And we had to swing into alternatives. What's the alternative? Is the alternative going to also give us the same results? How can we ensure homogeneity at the end of the day and all that? So that was a very big lesson learned. And the other thing too that COVID taught us was to change with change, really. To change with change, and sometimes also to accept what it is, because if it is what it is and there are no alternatives, or the alternative is going to take us off skew, then we can have proper documentation to justify that if we are asked in the future. So that's just a little niche of a summary of, I would say, I was in charge of vendor management, vendor oversight, vendor management. The other role I played was protocol deviations. My job is to ensure that all protocol deviations are properly entered. Now, during all our meetings, our study meetings, internally and externally, I'm listening closely. I'm trying to understand what issues going on. And if that issue is beyond the scope of the protocol, then, and that has happened, that should be a protocol deviation. So I make sure that that is entered as a protocol deviation and properly documented.
All right, thank you so much, Sagua. This has been really, really enlightening. I love the way you also talked extensively about the COVID-19, because I was going to ask about that. That what happened, when you had to, the priorities shifted, and then you had to, how do you manage competing priorities, especially in an environment like yours, where, of course, the environment is very sensitive. Every drug trial, every project definitely would be important. So, how do you manage those competing priorities? So I think you touched on that a bit already.
It's
But if you want to go ahead to, put a little more flesh into that, that would also be very, very helpful.
it's really tough. I would say, you know, I wake up in the morning and I have my plan. I have my to do. I have
Mm-hmm.
what I want to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes there are fires that you need to quench.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I approach those kinds of situation is you have the important, the priority, what's important, what's critical, what needs, what's the deadline, and the impact. So what's the likelihood that if I don't get this task done, what's it going to break in the whole process? That helps me prioritize. That helps me really set clear priorities on what I need to do per time so that I am working in sync with the timelines for the project. One, two, I'm also in close communication with my manager, because if there are any changes, I should let him know. And together we can, if it's something that doesn't require escalation, we can say, okay, put this on the back burner and get this on board. How long is it going to take you to work on this? But another thing that I have come to learn is there are times that, management just puts dates arbitrarily. Is this really a hard date? And why are we having this date at this time? One, two. Remember that I said my role is really oversight of the vendors. And vendors, that they have a mind of their own, even if they have a contract signed. I always, from my agile standpoint, really, what are we trying to achieve? What's the problem we're trying to solve? One, two, we should also ensure that the vendor they have a clear picture of what the objective is. Because if we are putting pressure under them and they do not know why we are putting pressure under them, they are going to be defensive. And we don't want that. We want results. So I usually like to explain to them that the reason, this is the big picture. So when you see me coming down on you, it's not because I have any beef with you. It's not anything personal. It's because, remember the picture I showed you? We are in that stage where we need you to really collaborate closely with us so that we can get the picture fully formed. And that has really helped to make them understand that, okay, at this point, oh yeah, I remember. Any wall of defense, because really when walls are built up, it's difficult to get really work done. And relationship is very important, especially with vendor management. So I make sure that I am very mindful of their time. I'm mindful of the what we plan and what realistically can be achieved. Currently, I'm working on a project, and there was an amendment. Clinical trial has kind of unknowns. There was an amendment along the line to our protocol, and there was this particular sample that were initially collected at the beginning of the protocol. But when the amendment came in, the samples were not expected to be collected, and sites were still collecting those samples. So which means there are deviations, and these are human subjects property. These are property of human beings that by law and by regulatory requirement, we should have a justification for collecting it. Did the subject consent to collecting these samples? They did not consent to collecting the samples because there was an amendment. Now we are on the new amendment. The expectation is these samples should not be collected, but unfortunately they were collected. And what I'm doing right now is cleaning up and making sure that all the samples that were collected after the amendment kicked in should be destroyed. But before they are destroyed, I'm ensuring that we have proper documentation, evidence that sites are no longer collecting the samples. One, all the samples collected have been shipped to the central laboratory. Two, and they are the actual samples that were not expected to be collected. So working with the vendor was like finding a needle in a haystack, because it was excruciating. It took me 1 year, literally, because yes, it took me 1 year. This is what I wouldn't lie. This is one of the most painful because during meetings and you get to hear management, hey, what about the project? What about the project? The vendor, of course, they got frustrated because this is looking at samples as far back as 2021, 2022. Sites have moved on, but regardless, we have to do what we have to do. So I get reports from this vendor. They don't do their QC. They don't do anything. They just dump it right on me. And it's my job because at the end of the day, I'm going to sign on it. No matter how management presses me or pressures me, I will not be pressured so much to put my signature on something that is inaccurate because that's a testament to me at the end of the day when the push comes to shove. So I kept looking at it from like they were very frustrated with me, but I told them I'm not the messenger. I'm a messenger. I'm not the one that gave the message. So this is what I'm trying to do. And I would expect you also, before you send the report to me, can you also ensure that you do your own bit? Because doing your bit and doing my bit is going to take a long time. And it's really not fair to have me do all that. I work through the weekends sometimes, and I'm talking of thousands of data that I have to look through. And it was very because if we what I was trying to prevent is, don't tell me these samples were collected. Give me the evidence. When did the subject sign to get the samples collected? If the date of signature does not align with the date the amendment kicked in, then the samples will most likely be collected before the amendment. So that's really what I was pinning down. You have to give me an evidence that the samples were incorrectly collected. And if I see the evidence, I can do my work and confirm if they were correctly or incorrectly collected. And that took a year. You wouldn't believe it.
I believe it, actually. Don't worry. I know.
It got to a point that even last month, there was this final deadline that I gave them. Last month, like this, the week they sent me a sample, and I said, I remember these two sites they were the last to have the amendments approved. Kindly ensure that the date of approval is written. And guess what? They had an error, which means if I had approved it, those samples that were correctly collected would have been destroyed. And that's a huge finding. And I kept telling my manager, because he kept saying, oh, this is taking too long. I said, I'm going to sign this thing. If samples are destroyed that are not meant to be destroyed, do you know it's already destroyed. So I was mindful of the time, but I also understood the pattern of the vendor. And I took the extra time to say, I'm going to do the whole work. I don't mind, because the aim is to get it done at the end of the day. The stake at the end of the day is from the sponsor. We are still the one that has oversight of the study. Even if we have this aspect contracted to a vendor, we still should oversee the vendor and ensure that things are done as it should be. So that's...
Thank you so much. Just in case you're wondering what QC is quality control. And yes, I love the way FA has substantiated that quality is a very, very huge part of project management. There are different constraints. You have quality, you have resources, you have risk, you have the scope time, which is of course what everyone knows. Scope, the time, the budget, but quality is also a very crucial aspect, because you do not want to go through the entire project, within scope, time, budget, and end up churning out rubbish, right? So I love the way you really take quality very, very seriously. Thank you so much, Efe. At least I trust that the drugs I'm taking with people like you have the highest standards. Thank you. Right. So the thing that stood out for me was the portion where you said that when walls are built up, it's difficult to actually get the work done. It speaks into the importance of stakeholder management and vendor management, which is very important for your work to actually be delivered successfully. Really appreciate all that beautiful insights. And just before I let you go, I just want you to put out one advice to people out there that are doing they're in several roles, delivering maybe in different job titles aside project manager, and are thinking, oh, I need to take a course in project management, despite the fact that they are actually handling projects. They are, sitting on the fence about whether to take a formal training or whether to just keep going, the way they are as a layman. What is your advice to them out there?
Thank you very much, Cindy. It's very important because what you really don't know, when you wing it, there will be a lot of mistakes, and that could impact on your confidence. It's not that you don't know it, but you just need the right knowledge to help you and guide you on how to deliver. Knowledge, confidence, and competence all go hand in hand. One thing is to have the knowledge, but if you're not competent enough, you cannot have the confidence to deliver that. So, how does confidence come in? It's when you hone your skills. And like I said, project management is a title, but everybody wears the hat. So, if you want to learn something, if you want to know more of something, you got to learn it. It's important, to be guided by someone who's gone before you, someone who has the depth of experience. It doesn't make you less. It makes you even more powerful because you already have someone who is very knowledgeable as a toolkit in your arsenal. With the diversity of experience and knowledge that they bring to the table, in addition to what you have, you are you're a force to be reckoned with, and your confidence will skyrocket because you're not just thinking of only your current environment. You're thinking of, if I want to pivot into the next career, into the next industry, I have the experience from the eyes of my sphere, my network. I have that experience. Even if you have not been in it, you can hear and understand and know, at least to an extent, the expectation, how to prepare for that pivot, for that transition. So it's not just enough to wing it. Be properly guided. I used to say that it's when you see a bean, the way back in Africa, in Nigeria, when you wash beans or pepper, you just throw the water away, and sometimes those seeds can grow. But are they growing to become viable? Will they survive? They will grow, but to what extent will they grow? And how buoyant will they grow? Compared to a farm of beans, a farm of pepper that is intentionally nurtured into fruition, into full growth and marketable value. So that's where training comes in. That's where the work you put in coming. And training is not just going to be trained by somebody, either virtually or in person. I see training as networking as well, because you're building your community. You're intentional about what you do, and those are the things and resources that you will fall back to when the time comes, because that time will always come.
All the wonderful insights. There is something I remembered when you were speaking. It was talking about, I think it was from Oprah Winfrey, when she was saying that be so good at what you do that you become almost indispensable. And I love the way you
Right.
talked about confidence, competence building confidence. That's definitely something I'm going home with. I don't know if anyone caught that, but if you did not, then you're sitting on a long thing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Efe. Really appreciate your time, the efforts. Thank you for being on our screen today. It was really, really amazing. We definitely did get golden nuggets from this engagement with you today. And we hope for the opportunity to connect with you again very soon. Thank you
Yes.
so
Same
much.
here. Same here. Yes. And I also want to just say thank you to you, Cindy, and to your team. Going through the class was you have the expectation, okay, yeah, we're going to the class, but meeting the people, experiencing the real hands-on training is second to none. I will say, because some the way you see someone doing it, you think it's easy. You don't know that the person has done the back work,
Mhm.
and you just see the person doing it like that. And now the person has said, "Okay, try it. Come and do it. We'll hands on. Let's see it." You now realize, like, oh. Okay, need a little more practice. And that's exactly what this training, taught me. Like, you know it, but when you don't practice it, when you don't really use your hand, there's this hand to brain muscle memory that comes. Even if you fail at the first attempt, just keep practicing it and you get better. And that's really brings about the confidence and the competence as you go. And because you know that if I can just practice it a few more times, I'm not giving up, building your resilience, because it's not every time that you will skill it. So you have to build that resilience and having the mindset set of never giving up. If I can only commit XYZ time a day to practice this thing, in no less time I will be very good at it. I will be confident and I will grow to the person I want to become.
All right. Thank you so much. Resilience, adaptability. Hear it, hear it, hear it from Efe.
Very important.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to allow you to enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Really appreciate you. Take all the flowers. You deserve it. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have an amazing Saturday
Thank
and
you so much.
connect again
And have a
soon.
wonderful day. Yeah.